Hey there, everyone, and welcome to the Halfway Through the Hate podcast, the world's most important trans-Pacific wrestling podcast. And I am joined here today by my co-host Tom. Tom, how you doing?
Doing good.
And I am Joe, and we are here to talk to you about various things this week. Of course, we've got a lot of news about various things, including that mystery wrestling promotion we talked about last week. An injury. We've got some wrestlers who are just not going to give it up, and more on the TNA Death Watch, and of course, another underrated, overrated. So, but we're going to end. We're going to start this off with something a little different. Not different at all, actually. It's going to be something positive about Raw. So, Tom, what was positive about Raw for you this week?
I got to be honest. I really loved the Lightning on Raw
Oh
this
my
week.
God, that was that was the thing I was super excited for because like I've been saying it for months now
Yes.
that like the only thing that's gonna make me take the Undertaker seriously as being able to fight anybody in the WWE currently, including Brock Lesnar, would be him being able to shoot lightning now. But now that Bray Wyatt is shooting the lightning, um, we've upped the level here.
We we're looking at the possibility of a Lightning versus Lightning match.
I uh, I demand a lightning and fire versus lightning and fire match.
I mean I generally like it. I think, it's goofy, it's ridiculous, but I like it for those reasons. Um but I also want to point out, like, people are sort of excited about this. They're like, "Oh, pretty cool." And some of these are the same people who think intergender wrestling isn't believable. I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, lightning and fire, that's okay. A woman wrestling a man, no way.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I don't know. I like the lightning and fire. I think that's awesome.
I do too. I was delighted to see it this week on
That would have
Raw.
been my positive thing about Raw too. But I caught something right in the beginning of the show that I don't know if it showed up again because I wasn't paying that close attention. But someone in the audience got through with their giant um, Trump Hogan 2016 sign that they made, and it like showed up.
Are you
Yeah, it showed up
serious?
right in the beginning of the show. If you watch the first like 5 minutes, it's definitely there. And I thought like, how did they get it past security? Uh,
Yeah, kudos to that person for getting it past security. They may have some people. Was it like a really simple looking
yeah, it
design?
wasn't like it was. I mean, it was like red, white, and blue, but it was a
Okay.
big
'Cause
Trump Hogan 2016 sign, and I thought like, oh, well, that's awesome.
that's pretty cool. I know sometimes people will bring in a sign that says something like, "We love you, John Cena," and then they also bring in a marker, and then while they're there, they write, like whatever, some stupid thing. But this sounds like there was a little more effort into it, and so kudos to whoever brought the Trump Hogan sign.
Yeah, but beyond that, the wrestling was kind of ho hum for the show, but the lightning and the Trump Hogan sign, that's
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the show is all right, but I mean, when you combine Lightning with Trump Hogan and an illicitly smuggled Trump Hogan sign, you've got a decent Raw.
yeah, I liked that. It wasn't actually wasn't it? It wasn't a really it wasn't a bad Raw at all. It was just like
No, it wasn't
it was just
terrible.
kind of eh.
They've been all right, actually, since the pay-per-view. I've
The
enjoyed
last week was
Raw
really
more than I
good.
had.
That was the thing. Like I
Yeah.
was there was a lot of good stuff to talk about last time. Um, and there were. I mean, I guess the initial match was good too. I mean, the Kevin Owens versus Dolph Ziggler wasn't a bad match. I mean, it wasn't
Nope.
a great
Nope. I
match.
agree.
I mean, it wasn't like Kevin Owens versus Cesaro good.
No, but it was better than Kevin Owens versus
That's
Ryback.
true. So I can't really complain about that. And
Yeah. So Raw was
and I
decent.
can't stress enough, lightning.
Lightning. There was lightning that led to fire. Um, we should probably turn to the news since we both like the same stuff about Raw. Um, the news this week, we've had an interesting story. This has been sort of rumored ever since WrestleMania, when Rowdy Ronda Rousey, showed up at WrestleMania, and there was like an angle with Stephanie McMahon that was teased. So lately, Ronda Rousey's been saying she really wants to be a WWE diva and like take Charlotte's challenge up, um, which would be great because, like, I mean, in a shoot fight, that would, like, Charlotte would be like within 20 seconds. would be beaten.
Probably be less than
But
that. Be like one of those
um,
9-second UFC fights.
yeah. But so it seems like there's contractual issues after. Apparently, Dana White was surprised that Ronda Rousey showed up at WrestleMania, and Dana White, the UFC guy who's from our hometown, and is not like he considers himself a big competitor to Vince, and she's right now she's the biggest UFC star there is. Right, there's no bigger star in MMA in terms of like mainstream
Oh, that's
recognition.
probably true. I was gonna say, what about that Irish guy who's always
Oh yeah, Conor
yeah,
McGregor.
he's pretty popular, but I don't know if he's more popular than Ronda Rousey.
Yeah, she's like getting written about in mainstream publications. She's showing up on ESPN a lot. And one thing I was actually watching her on ESPN recently, and she was saying that she wants to be an actress, and she's been taking acting lessons and stuff. And I have to say, it's pretty smart of her to think about. I think like going to WWE would be great for them. It would also be great for her. I know a lot of MMA people and a lot of like mainstream people think it's a bad idea because the WWE is fake. Wrestling's fake. But like you have a limited shelf life in mixed martial arts.
Yeah, it's not like
I
people
mean,
have hundreds of mixed martial art matches.
right, exactly. And like it's you age out of that pretty quickly. Um, and yeah, I mean, how many fights does she have a year? 2 or 3 maybe. So that's not a lot of opportunities for big paydays. I know she does endorsements and things, but in terms of like career longevity, thinking about being an actress or being like a pro wrestler is actually a lot smarter than saying like, oh, I'm going to stick it out in MMA until I turn 35. I mean, like, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. So I kind of hope to see it. I mean, honestly, that would create some more buzz and excitement around the Divas division. I'd be pretty excited. I don't know if she can do it. I think there's always a question about whether people can adapt to the style of wrestling. But I mean, I'd like to see it happen. I think it'd be really good for everybody except UFC, of course.
Yeah, thing with it is that I think like it's not even a thing where she can't go to the WWE. It's not like she's somebody who wants to be a WWE diva and they're like, we're not interested. It's like they're incredibly interested. They want her. So like it's just a matter
Yep.
of like when can she get there?
Right, and she's like a huge wrestling fan. Like she's grew up watching wrestling. She was a big Roddy Piper fan. Adapted her nickname in tribute to him. She calls her and her 3 friends the Four Horsewomen. So like, and she really wants to. She said in this interview that we're referring to that happened this week. She's been talking about. She really wants to make it happen. She's a big wrestling fan. She wants to do it. There have been contractual things in the past, but it seems like it's a matter of when rather than if. But I think it would be great. It would be a lot of mainstream publicity for WWE too, and especially if she's like not just coming in for like a one-shot deal, but if she's actually going to be somebody with a contract who's going to be on weekly
She's
television
gonna
or something
show
like
up like
that.
Brock Lesnar. She's gonna be the women's
Right.
division Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she'd be great. She would instantly bring a level of credibility to it that it doesn't have right now. So I would be excited to see that just for that reason.
Could be good.
Um, it could be good. It could be good. Turning away from Stanford for a little bit, let's talk about the classic wrestling revolution.
Now the classic wrestling revolution is the apparently the name of the mystery promotion that we talked about last week that Jake Roberts was talking about.
So it was not just a Jake Roberts hallucination, which is good. There is a promotion, and they actually have like little video spots, little video clips of like Shane Douglas walking under a bridge and talking. And Piper was apparently involved in this. This is a promotion that's going to be doing something in Las Vegas. It's not really clear yet. I'll put links up, but to watch the videos, it's not really clear what is going on. It seems like it's going to be wrestling, but with some kind of difference. Like there are going to be teams, and it's going to be kind of a reality show feel where guys like Jake Roberts and Road Warrior Animal and Tommy Dreamer and Shane Douglas will be training young guys. And the press release that the company put out says world-class coaches and their teams battle it out 52 weeks a year in dynamic Las Vegas. Come join us for real professional wrestling. We call it reality sports. Oh, what a rush. So I don't know what that means. I have no idea. And they have some like little clips. It looks like they've got a wrestling ring and an audience. They've taped some shows. And there are these other clips where like Roddy Piper throws a drink in Shane Douglas's face and they kind of square off, but it's not quite clear what's going on. So I don't know. It does seem to be real though. They do have footage from something that they're showing.
Yeah, I looked
Um,
at that and I thought like, what is this? Does it, like how did it happen and nobody report on it?
yeah, that's the thing. Like it just seemed to come out of nowhere. But these guys, I mean, like clearly this is something Piper was doing before he died. So I have no idea why no one knew that or no one said, "Oh yeah, by the way, when he died, Piper was working on this new thing."
Yeah, really, that's it's weird. They should get Hulk Hogan.
They they should get Hulk Hogan. Um, so I'm excited. I'm cautiously excited.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
it depends on what they do with it. If it's going to be like the Old Man Wrestling League, it's not actually going to be that exciting.
right.
But who knows? It could be. I'd like to imagine that it's just part of Global Force Wrestling.
Well, see, that brings us to our next news item, which is that Jerry Jarrett, who had said that he was never going to be Jerry Jarrett, the longtime Memphis promoter, father of Jeff Jarrett, who had and co-founder of TNA, had said he was never going to do wrestling again. He and Jeff Jarrett had some kind of falling out, and he was done with wrestling. But now he's saying he just announced this week on Facebook that he is contracts are with lawyers. He's getting back into the wrestling game. He hasn't given any details. People are speculating it's either Global Force Wrestling or Classic Wrestling Revolution. And as you pointed out, you mentioned this. Global Force has been taping shows in Las Vegas as well.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, are they creating a second promotion that's going to be running only in Las Vegas? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, so it's not clear if there's going to be a connection, but it wouldn't be
It
surprising if there is a connection, especially because Jeff is involved with Global Force. I mean, Jeff runs Global
seems like
Force.
they would be like a partner company if anything. Like, I mean, it would make sense. They could use the same building and the same ring. I guess nobody would want to use that weird octagonal ring or whatever, though.
So, are you excited? I mean, like, I don't know. I'm always excited to see more wrestling, but I don't know what the audience is at this point necessarily.
Yeah, the thing with it is like we don't know enough about it to like be excited. It's just kind of like, oh, well, there's going to be this wrestling promotion with these wrestling people that we know, but all the names that we know are people who are too old to wrestle
Right.
or are still wrestling but probably shouldn't be.
Yeah, if somebody was like, "Hey, I've got a wrestling promotion starting up with Road Warrior Animal and Shane Douglas. How excited are you on a scale of 1 to 10?" You'd be like, "That sounds more like a Comic-Con where these guys are appearing." Like, I don't.
Yeah, I mean, it's like all the names involved are like Tommy Dreamer and Terry Funk and stuff, and you're like, well, those guys are good, but Terry Funk's like 70 something now. Is he going to be wrestling?
Yeah, I don't want to see Terry Funk wrestle or Tommy Dreamer wrestle necessarily. And I saw Tommy Dreamer wrestle in May and he was fine, but I don't think you can build a promotion around Tommy Dreamer.
But he's wearing those polka dot sweatpants now, Tom,
Oh my god.
and he's wildly out of shape.
Yeah, and he also has his own
Yeah, that's
promotion.
what I was also thinking. Like he's got his own promotion. Is like he just kind of tangentially involved in this one, or is it something entirely different? Have all these other promotions merged together to create a new promotion? Who knows?
Well, and like I sort of wonder too because some of the things that people said, and if you watch the clips with like Shane Douglas and Road Warrior Animal talking, um, they they say things like, "Is wrestling the way it used to be?" In case you missed wrestling on how it was, like, and I don't know that a lot of people really sort of miss wrestling the way it used to be, quote unquote.
Um,
Like I don't know how many people remember wrestling the way it used
well,
to
the
be.
problem with that also is that the way it used to be is like entirely different depending on what part of the country you live in.
Right.
Unless
Well,
they're talking about
exactly.
1990s. And then like nobody misses the 1990s.
Yeah, as much as as much as people say they want the Attitude Era back, they do
Yeah,
not.
I hope that's not what they're talking about. I imagine they're talking about 1970s or 80s though, considering the people involved. Um, which again, like if you're thinking like, yeah, I love Memphis wrestling in the 80s or 70s or whatever, you're on a entirely different nostalgia kick than somebody who lived in Connecticut at the time.
Right. And I also think that it's just not. I don't know. I think the way to get people into wrestling is not to be like, remember when you liked wrestling in 1975? Like you have to. There are very few things that work when you package them as old.
Yeah, that's kind of true. And another problem with it is that like they're not just packaging it as old. It's like here, remember how wrestling was in 1975? Here's people from 1975.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I found on wrestling forum. I guess in addition to the like the clips they shot that we saw, there were also a couple of demonstration matches, including one that involved Rocky Romero versus Roddy Piper's son, which is not promising.
Okay.
Um, but so who knows what that means? Who knows uh, what this thing is going to be? I mean, based on what we saw with the sort of like coaching aspect and the reality show feel to it. I mean, I think that could work. I've said this before that if you make something that's more like ESPN than it is like WWE, you might attract a different audience to it. But I don't know if this is the way to do it, especially as you pointed out, you're dealing with like guys who are pretty old, who are only going to sort of matter to wrestling fans.
Yeah, well, that's like it's kind of separate though because it wasn't that like reality based thing more for Global Force.
Yeah. That, and sort of like it's kind of what WWE is doing with that Breaking Ground. I mean, it's exactly what Breaking Ground is, but yeah, Global Force. That's the idea that their show Amped, which no one has seen by the way. Their show Amped is like it's matches, but then the interstitial stuff is like reality show style or like documentary style interviews that are works, but they're not presented as works,
Uh,
which I think is a little. I mean, I think I'm curious to see how that approach works because I think that the WWE approach is pretty tiresome at this
I
point.
wonder. Yeah, I'm kind of interested in seeing Global Force because of that. Like, I just want to see how it's going to play out.
I agree.
But you know, at the same time, it involves Jeff Jarrett, so
Well, right. I my fear is not that it's a bad idea. My fear is that the execution might be flawed.
yeah, I think it's probably a good idea. It seems all right, but man, on a somewhat side note, have you actually watched Breaking Ground? I haven't watched it yet, so I don't know what it's about.
Yeah, it's like a sort of a documentary show about NXT and like the people there. Um, and
Is it like a documentary show in the sense that like the documentary part is in quotes?
no, I mean it is. It's like it's there is like real documentary stuff, including in an episode. There's like a cringe-inducing scene, and I can't believe they put this in where they're like the Devin Taylor, the backstage interviewer who got fired. They show her getting fired.
Oh,
Yeah, it's like some like suit sits her down and is like, "You're not working out. Like you're doing all this stuff wrong. There's just no room for improvement. You got to go." And it's like horrible. So it's presented as like a like an ESPN style documentary about these people who are trying to make it in NXT, but with like weird William Shatner and like the voiceover is like totally straight. So it's like William Shatner trying to be like portentous and solemn. Each day these superstars rise before dawn to begin their training regimens that will take them to the top of the sports entertainment, that kind of thing. So it's not bad for like the sort of glimpses you get into what it's like to be training at that level, but we'll see how it goes. I mean, they're pushing it really hard, so they believe in the product, but I don't know. Again, right now it's just on the network, and I think like YouTube, their YouTube channel, they put it up
yeah,
too.
it's on YouTube. I
But
just haven't watched it.
the kind of people who like reality shows and who might appreciate that sort of documentary style approach um, probably are not going to pay $10 a month to get a WWE product. Like if they had a deal with Netflix or Hulu or something, that might make more sense.
Don't they have a deal with Hulu? Isn't Raw on
They
Hulu?
do just for Raw.
Okay,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think the what's it called? That show is it's free on YouTube because they want people to watch it who are not people who are on the network.
Right.
So possibly it has something to do with that.
It could. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm interested in
Um,
watching it though. I just haven't sat down and actually watched it.
it's good. It's worth seeing, and like some of the stuff is, I mean, seems pretty unvarnished. Like person getting fired. Like that's not a work at all. Um,
That person actually did get fired, so.
that person actually got fired. Yeah, and like that's just shitty. But yeah. So anyway, around the corner, maybe classic wrestling revolution. Maybe a year from now, we'll be talking about all the excitement coming out of Vegas. Um, or maybe we'll be talking about our next news item. Goldberg wants to come back and wrestle Steve Austin. How excited? With a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being gobbledygook or 2, 10 being more lightning. How excited are you for Goldberg v Stone Cold?
Um, 2?
So slightly more than gobbledygooker returns.
Yeah, well, uh, Goldberg is not a good wrestler.
No.
Um, and Steve Austin is way, way past being a good wrestler. Like, he's
Yep.
too old, too injured, too not in the ring. And like, it's not a front on Steve Austin. I mean, people get old. That's what happens. But he's also too injured to work. I mean, like, he had like weird neck surgeries and stuff where like he's not, you know, it's a little scary for him to be in the ring, and especially be in the ring with someone like Goldberg, who is notorious for injuring people.
Right, and like ending careers.
Yeah, ask Bret Hart.
Um, yeah, I can't like I think Goldberg. I think he's a guy who benefits tremendously from people's nostalgia for the '90s, and I think he was one of the hottest stars in wrestling for a very brief time. But Goldberg had a good look. He was totally a product of booking and the streak, right? And when that ended, he couldn't transition to being like a different guy. That was all there was to him. The fact that he was this undefeated monster. And when they took that away, it was like he's a guy who can't really work in the ring. He doesn't speak on the mic. What do you have? You just have this big dude.
Yeah, now he's just an old big dude.
That's right. That's right. He's an old big dude who hasn't wrestled in a long, long time, and who was never particularly noted for his like 5-star classics to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, all of his
Um,
matches were he's booked like the Ultimate Warrior in the sense that like, all his matches were really short because like if they're not, it just kind of exposes that he's not a good wrestler.
right.
So, all his matches were just like run into the ring, spear, jackhammer, pin, done.
Right.
And do you think Steve Austin's going to take a spear and a jackhammer from Goldberg?
No.
It's not going to happen.
No.
And it's just not gonna. It's not a good idea. There's way better people. If Steve Austin is going to come back, there's a lot of better people he could wrestle.
Yeah. Like I think I also think to your second point, I don't think it's a good idea for Steve Austin to come back at all. I think he's got all kinds of health problems, and it's been so long since he's wrestled. I just don't think it would be like there are some guys because of their style and because they never really had serious injuries, who can come back and just do it and do it. Like I think Shawn Michaels could probably still have a good match. I think he could come back and still do it. Sting did it when he came back. But like Steve Austin, it's been too long and his injuries are too serious. And against Goldberg, like they would hype it and it would get a lot of attention. A lot of people would want to see it, but a lot of those people would be wrong. Like it would not be a good match at all.
No, that would be a bad match.
The only reason I want it to happen is so that you and I can mockingly refer to him as Oldberg.
Oldberg.
And the Elder
The
Taker.
Elder Taker. That's who they'll fight. Oldberg versus the Elder Taker.
Goldberg versus Brock Lesnar. Now that's something I'd like to see, huh?
Yeah, it would be awesome. That would be a 5-star wrestling classic.
I just think at some point you have to accept that the parade has moved on, and not everyone is Terry Funk and can do it when they're 70 years old.
Yeah, I mean, Terry Funk is still wrestling. I mean, he's retired like 80 times, but
I know.
He's like, I'm retired until someone books me again.
Right? Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, they could put the belt on him in Classic Wrestling Revolution. We have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, and like sometimes that kind of thing is fun. You remember when Bob Backlund came back and they put the belt on him?
Yep.
That was fun because he was like crazy old man power or whatever. and
Yeah, that
and it
was
wasn't like and Bob Backlund wasn't horribly injured or like put out in a way that like it wasn't somewhat realistic, where it's like, well, he's old, but he's crazy and old, so that gives him extra powers.
that's right. Yeah. He's got crazy old man powers.
Yeah, and people just and it's stupid, but people accept that kind of thing. If you were just like, I don't know, but he had crazy old man strength, and you're just like, I kind of understand that.
Right. And that, I mean, I accept the same way I accept lightning
Yeah,
in
yeah,
a ring.
exactly.
I'm like, okay, all right. Within this reality, crazy old man strength is actually something that works. But yeah, Goldberg doesn't have that vibe to him. It would like Goldberg is an ex football player. That's it. And like, nobody's terrified of those guys unless you're like at a nightclub and then one of them is looming over you. That's about the only time that's frightening.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's kind of how things work with Goldberg. Goldberg is like he never got over in the WWE like they wanted him to. It
Nope.
just
I was at the pay per view where he made his first WWE appearance against The Rock in Worcester, and the crowd um, Goldberg was supposed to be the face, and like they really expected the crowd to go nuts for him, but the crowd was solidly behind The Rock.
yeah, no, nobody wanted Goldberg because again, after the streak was gone, like his whole mystique was gone.
Yeah, people always talk about like Taz as a good example of what like protective, thoughtful booking can do to a guy, and like how that's like the ultimate tribute to Paul Heyman that he could get people to come out and see like Julio De Niro and the Baldies because everything was booked so well. Goldberg doesn't. No one ever says this, but it's true. Goldberg is a great example of smart booking. Like they did a great job with Goldberg in the beginning, and then, but that's all it was. That's all it amounted to was great booking.
Yeah, I'm not.
And in fairness, he had the look. I mean, he's a frightening looking dude at his prime, and he knew how. I mean, like he could lift people up in that crazy jackhammer, and he could tackle people. Like so, he wasn't quite as hopeless as the Ultimate Warrior, but I agree with you absolutely. He was booked the way the Ultimate Warrior was. He'd come out to the ring, the thing's over in 2 minutes or less, and then just lather, rinse, repeat. Um, but the idea of him coming back for like a retirement classic at WrestleMania is just not that appealing to me.
Yeah, that's definitely not appealing to me either. And I mean, pretty much same goes for Steve Austin, although for different reasons. Because I
Right.
because
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
Steve Austin probably could wrestle an all right match, not with Goldberg, but it wouldn't be anywhere
No.
near his best match, or like even remotely on the level of like a normal Steve Austin match. But he could do something probably. I mean, like the thing with Steve Austin is not ever was never that like he's a super good wrestler. It's that he is really good at the non-wrestling parts of being a pro wrestler. He's really good at getting things over in the ring, good at being a character, good at being like, a kind of storyteller. And I think that, I mean, that's like all the things that got him over so much. Like, I mean, just even on his recent appearance to announce another wrestler coming to the ring of whatever the purpose of it was. Um,
Yeah, people
yeah,
went
people
crazy.
went nuts for him, and like that's the thing is like the WWE should use him that way. Just use him as the Raw general manager or whatever. Who knows? Like it's people like Stone Cold, but they don't particularly care if he wrestles, I think.
I agree. I mean, Steve Austin's one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, and he's a guy who adapted really well. If you look at him in WCW, he has this really athletic, like classic technical scientific wrestler, Chris Adams style. And then he gets hurt a bunch of times, and he's able to make that successful transition to like the brawling Stone Cold style that I think served him really well. Um, so I think if he came back, he'd have to have kind of a brawling match where he's not really taking crazy bumps, and he doesn't have to do a whole lot in terms of like actually stretching his body. But I agree. I mean, I think people are just happy to see him and would be happy to see him in a non-wrestling role. Kind of what they've done with Mick Foley over the years. Like Mick Foley doesn't have to jump off cages anymore. People just like to see him.
Yeah, but Mick Foley can barely walk now, so
Um,
yeah. So we'll move on. Next news bit, the
yes,
last news bit is that poor Kota Ibushi is injured. That's
this is
this is
bad
bad
news.
news. Kota Ibushi, you guys will know from New Japan Pro Wrestling and DDT. It's like the weirdest thing. Like he he was recently sick. Like he got sick with like a fever or something, and like canceled a bunch of shows, and then he was back. Like I saw him recently, and then he disappeared again, and apparently like he was having a thing where like half of his body was numb or something. And then they were like, "Oh, you should probably get that checked out." And it turns out he's got like a herniated cervical disc or something. So he's out for an indeterminate amount of time, but like he's not back this year, obviously. And they said he'll probably miss like half of next year. So,
That's really horrible.
but yeah, like it's not surprising if like Kota Ibushi is like Ricochet. He's like always doing crazy flipping and stuff, and there's like all these stories about him. Like, I've heard wrestlers talk about hanging out with him, and they're like, we're just like walking around the streets of Tokyo or something, and we had been drinking all night or something, and he's like really drunk, but he's still running up the sides of buildings and doing flips and stuff. Like, and they're like,
That's awesome.
yeah, Kota Ibushi can do things, crazy flipping things that I can't do completely sober when he's totally drunk. So like he's that kind of wrestler. He's like a crazed flippy guy. And he always does kind of awesome stuff. Like he's always great to watch. You can actually watch him in a match with Ricochet if you search for it. I think it's on YouTube. But he does all types of stuff, and that he's injured is not like really a surprise because he's always doing crazy stuff. But how he was injured, I don't know. Probably just kind of wear and tear after doing all this kind of crazy stuff. But it's kind of bad. It's bad news and kind of bad timing for him because like he's got a book coming out in a week or something that he had to cancel all his dates for, and like
Oh, jeez.
he had to like vacate a title and give up some other title shot he was in recently because he's injured. So
That's one thing that scares me a lot about uh, some of the guys I like the most. I was at a wrestling show on Sunday and watching. There was a triple threat match with AR Fox, ACH, and David Starr, and Fox and ACH to an extent too. But Fox was just doing like the craziest stuff, and it was so much fun to watch. And I realized I've seen Fox a lot this year, and he's really exciting. But then I think like, God, the risk of injury, and then just like the regular wear and tear, even if you don't get injured, like the stuff you're putting yourself through, it just shortens careers. So it's that kind of thing is it's special. So whether it's Kota Ibushi or someone else, like appreciate while it's there because those guys aren't indestructible.
yeah, they're not they're either not long for wrestling or not long for that style of wrestling. It's not like
Right.
something you can do when for 10 years straight.
Yeah, exactly. Basketball fans will know it's a Blake Griffin
Well,
thing. Like Blake Griffin was exciting that style, but like you can only do that for 2 or 3 years. Like you can't do that kind of thing every night for your
or
entire
wrestling
career.
fans will know it's a Jushin Liger thing where like he used to be a crazy high flying dude, and now he
That's
doesn't do
true.
any of that.
Um, although we should say the exception is Mexico, for whatever reason.
Yeah,
Like well into their 50s, those guys are still doing that stuff. So if you're a fan of Lucha Libre, then take heart because your favorites will probably still be doing it when they're 55 years old. But for everyone else, it's a limited amount of time when you can do that stuff.
yeah. Unless you're from
Um,
Mexico or you're Terry Funk and you start doing moonsaults in your 50s.
that's right. Yeah, those are the two exceptions. Um, that's it for news. We want to now turn to our regular feature, the TNA Doomsday Clock, which I believe is at 11:57. Is that right?
Yes, I think. Did we move it to?
I think we
Did we
have to.
move it to 57? We must have.
I think we moved it to 7. I think we have to move it back because of this
I
week's
think you're
news.
right. Looking at the news, it is pretty interesting. TNA is going to be taping, Impact episodes in the UK and India. That's not the new news, though. The new thing is that they're going to be doing shows in New York City again. Um,
They're going to be at the Manhattan Center, famous for both the original debut of Raw and for many, many ECW shows. And apparently, they're going to be taping more Impact TV shows in February in New York City.
yeah, and like the thing with that is like it cost them a ton of money last time. I remember there was like a big thing about how expensive it was for them to run in New York City at the Manhattan Center last time they were there, and like that it
Yep.
wasn't profitable. Like it was a bad idea for them. So maybe they got something going on where they just want to wrestle in New York again, or something else is happening where they have some money to actually do that. I don't I don't know what it is, but it it couldn't they couldn't be stupid enough to be like, we don't have any money, let's go back to New York where we lost a bunch of money last time. Um,
Yeah,
well,
they could.
okay,
Let's be
they
honest.
could, but we're gonna give them the benefit of the doubt and say that they're not that stupid. So
Right.
we're gonna have to move the Death Watch clock back. Uh,
I think 11:56 because we still don't know what's going
yeah,
on.
but I mean it's a kind of a heartening sign for TNA. Maybe they're gonna keep going.
It's either a heartening sign or crazy bravado.
Could be a little of column A, a little of column B.
Yeah, you're right. It's hard to tell with TNA. It's always hard to tell. So, but I think 11:56 it makes sense because we sort of knew they were going to be taping Impact episodes in the UK and India, but the fact that they're making plans to come to the Manhattan Center, I don't know. I think that changes things. I think we got to set the clock
We
back.
gotta give them a little credit here.
Well done, TNA. Potentially well done, I guess.
Well done if it doesn't lead to immediate bankruptcy.
Right, which is always always at least a reasonable risk when it comes to TNA. So all right, so the TNA the Doomsday Clock, it's officially 11:56. Um, that's it for all our newsy stuff. I wanted to go back to our classic feature, underrated and overrated, which is something we do occasionally where we'll talk about things in wrestling that we think are underappreciated by wrestling fans and things that we think maybe get too much love from the fans. And I have proposed this week's underrated, overrated. I think, and now this might be controversy in and of itself. I think high flyers are underrated, and I think hardcore matches are overrated.
Well, all right.
And now you may say to yourself, all right, who thinks high flyers are underrated? I think a lot of people do. I think there's a lot of reluctance to put the major belt on high flyers, and that's why you have things like the X division where they're sort of corralled into this one division. And I think WWE struggles to use high flyers well at all. And then I think on like the sort of internet wrestling community nerd side, I think a lot of people deride what they call flippy shit and don't appreciate high flyers because they just see them as quote unquote spot monkeys who are just sort of acrobats as opposed to people who can tell a story. And I disagree. I think, and part of this, the seed was planted by the triple threat match I saw over the weekend in XWA's Resolution 15. When I watched AR Fox, like everything he did was just amazing. And AR Fox is someone who can do like stuff on the mat too. Like he doesn't just jump around, but the things he did, like running across the ring and jumping over the turnbuckle without touching the rope or the turnbuckle and flipping and then landing on David Starr on the ground and then landing on his feet, you can't watch that in person and not be amazed. Like that's the kind of thing you show people because it's something they've never seen before. Like you take people who've never seen wrestling before, you show them that match. You don't show them like guys brawling around the outside of the ring. Like you show them things like, look at this guy. And Mark and I were sitting with some indie wrestlers, some local indie wrestlers, and that match by far they were the most amazed by. And it was really worthwhile to sit with people who actually wrestle to get their perspective on what was happening. Because some like they were pointing out things I wouldn't have noticed. And they were saying, oh, okay, you see the guy who's doing that. That's why he's doing that. And they were like, okay, the ladder's screwy, so they're going to have to change the spot, that kind of thing. So that was interesting to see through their eyes. But they were just like fans for the triple threat match. They were just blown away. And to me, that was all because ACH and AR Fox are great high flyers. And David Starr is really good too. He's not a high flyer, but he's a really good wrestler. But when you watch human beings do this stuff that not many human beings can do, it's just awe-inspiring. I love those matches, and I just think they're seen as kind of like a novelty or a gimmick or like a sideshow where we're just going to put them over here in a cruiserweight division, and then everyone else, like the big muscle men, are going to focus on the stuff that people care about. I just don't think high flyers get the credit they deserve.
Yeah, you know what? I think I'm a little torn on this one because I like high flyers, but I do think a lot of times it does kind of turn. I mean, and this is not all the time, but sometimes when you watch like Ring of Honor, there's a lot of things where matches just do turn into kind of flippy guy spot fests where it's just like, okay, here's three guys doing, or like four guys doing a shooting star press at the same time or whatever. Um, and that kind of thing, I think it does kind of take away from it a bit. I don't think it's like it's bad that they do that. I like that kind of thing. It is amazing to watch. It's great to see, but like when everybody does it, it's kind of the thing where it's not special anymore. So I think like overall I tend to agree with you that like people tend to not rank those guys as highly as they should. And like especially WWE never uses those guys well. But like um there are times where it is kind of like, when like everybody is doing a shooting star press, it kind of makes it like, okay, it's cool, but everybody does it now. So it's the
Right.
kind of thing where, like, what are you going to do? You turn into Neville and you have to do like a shooting star press with a flip and a spin in it or something to make it even crazier. And I think
Oh, that's true. Yeah,
so.
I
So I
agree.
think like a lot of times, like I like watching those kind of guys. I like people like Ricochet who do crazy stuff. But like, if you put Ricochet on a show with like, um, someone like ACH and Matt Seidel and like all of those guys who do that same kind of stuff, and you don't put them together, like you put them in a match after a match after a match with those three guys, like the guy who is third is going to be no one's going to be excited for his shooting star press anymore.
No, that's true. I agree. I think to that point, I would say that too much of one style is a bad idea, regardless of the style. Like I like wrestling shows that mix it up, and that's I think is one of the reasons why Evolve it just doesn't register with me because too many of the it's like the same thing. It's guys who are really scientifically sound match after match, and even their kind of high flyer matches. Although I think the last pay per view was sort of an exception. Their high flyer matches also just feel the same kind of like grinded out style to me. So you're right. If you watch a card where it's just like a bunch of high flyers, after a while you're just numb to it, like because you've seen the same thing and you're like, okay, I know what the spot's going to be. But I think that's true of everything too. If you watch a bunch of like technical wrestlers after a while, like the submission holds don't seem as impressive anymore because you're like, this is like the fifth cross arm breaker I've seen someone do.
Yeah, I mean it's true, but the thing with it is that especially for high flying stuff is that those guys are doing something that seems amazing. Like if you do a cross arm breaker, it's kind of cool, but like it is the kind of thing also that where you're like, you know, it anybody can do it kind of. You know what I mean? Like there is a matter of like doing it in a way that's like smooth and technical or whatever. And that's like kind of what you want to see in something. But with a high flying thing, it is the kind of thing that is a little different in that case, only because the high flying stuff is not something anybody can do. Like I couldn't like get in a wrestling ring and just like suddenly start doing shooting star presses or moonsaults or whatever. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
But when you see it so much, it feels commonplace. Even though you know you can't do it, when everybody can do it, that's you're watching. It's just kind of like, oh well, ho hum, everybody can do that.
Yep.
And I think
Absolutely.
like it's a much because like anybody can do like an arm bar, but to make it look good is a different thing. Even if someone does it a bunch of times, like it doesn't take away anything from the arm bar because you don't have the feeling of like, oh, that arm bar is something that's not going to hurt his arm, or it's not, because you don't feel the armbar itself is a simple move that does damage, whereas like a shooting star press is something that's like crazy flashy that you could potentially, I mean, if you're thinking about damage wise, just like a regular body splash would do the same amount of damage. But
Right.
like it doesn't look as cool. But like when everybody does it, it just kind of loses the effect. You might as well just do a regular body splash at that point because, you know, what's the point of seeing a shooting star press 20 times? I mean, it loses the effect. Whereas like the armbar doesn't lose the effect in the same way because you know what it does. It's simple.
It's true. Although that style of match, like I think variety is the spice of life, and if you watch too much of the same match in a row, you just like you're not interested in the story because you've seen it 3 or 4 times before.
Yeah, well, I mean, I
Like
agree.
you
I don't disagree with you. I just think like for high flying guys, the repeating their moves often takes away more from the move than it does for like a technical wrestler to repeat a move often.
it's true, and I think there's more like pressure to innovate too.
Yeah, I mean I mean that's true. If you look at guys like someone like ACH or Ricochet or any of those guys, like they're always trying to do crazy new stuff, and they do always do crazy new stuff that you haven't seen before, and that's like a lot of the good part of seeing them. It's just like, you know, there's only so many things you can do before like um it just gets to the point where everybody is doing it. And I think like
Right.
um Ring of Honor tends to run into this thing where it the matches are just like these kind of speedy spot fests sometimes. And I think like they'll do it so like this whole show is like that. And it does kind of take away from it where you just feel like, oh well, this would have been a cool spot, but like, you know, I've already seen this move a million times in this same match.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think everything has to be used sparingly, but I think I think a show that doesn't include some high flying action is a missed opportunity to impress people. You want to see at least one match at a wrestling show that just makes you say, "Holy shit, I've never seen someone do that before."
Yeah, or even like, um, you know, because when I've been to the DDT shows, there's this huge fat guy who wrestles for them who does a moonsault, and like a moonsault is
Yeah,
not like a
that's awesome.
crazy move. Like, I mean, it's impressive, but like if you're a huge fat guy and you're doing a moonsault, it's really impressive. So like, you know, when you see that, you're just like, oh, well, that's kind of cool. And
Oh yeah.
it's something you wanna show people because you're just like, well, this look at this huge fat guy. He's not gonna be able to do anything, and then he like does a moonsault, and you're like, wow, okay, great.
Yeah, Vader's moonsault was not like the most technically beautiful and precise one you'll ever see, but it just the fact that Vader was doing it was really impressive.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, it's the same kind of thing with Brock Lesnar. Like Brock Lesnar can do a shooting star press. I mean,
Right.
when he did it on that pay per view, he missed it entirely, but
Right.
he
But he
could.
could. He could
And
do it.
like, you know, if you find the matches of him in OVW doing it, he does it correctly. But you know it's more impressive for someone like Brock Lesnar to do a shooting star press than it is for someone like Ricochet because it's used so
Right.
sparingly. But like that being said, on the overrated side of this, comparatively between those two styles, like a high flying match and a hardcore match, like think think of the best high flying match you've ever seen and the best hardcore match you've ever seen, or like even like the
Oh yeah.
higher tiers of those things, like a high tier high flying match and a high tier hardcore match. Um, the high flying match is always going to be better,
Yep.
even
Agreed.
though like there are hardcore matches, and I don't generally I don't like hardcore matches, but um, there are hardcore matches that are good, and even recently the Vampiro match at the end of Lucha Underground was amazing. It was a really good match,
Yes. Agreed.
but you know, at the same time, it was amazing because it's so sparing. Like it's not the kind of thing that happens all the time. It's like really done. You know, that was like pretty much the only one we saw in Lucha Underground. But
I also think there are like hardcore matches. I mean, most wrestling is more fun when you see it live. But there are like hardcore matches where there are guys who will kind of like with the high flyers who will be innovative and will do things that just make you cringe and you think like I how are they both still standing? after you see something in a hardcore match. But most of the time, this doesn't really happen in high flying matches because it's hard to be lazy and be a high flyer. Most of the time, like what passes for hardcore matches are like, when you see like a guy bring a chair to the ring, like you don't think this is going to get good. You think that we're going to see like the same like chair to the back spot that we've seen a million times. And it's like a plastic chair, or like there's so much stuff that's just kind of lazy and rote, and we've seen it 100 times before. I think that kind of laziness takes over in quote unquote hardcore matches, except for some real innovators and some people who do it really well, who just kind of make you say, "Oh my god." But I think that the risk of being lazy is so much more present in hardcore matches than it is in a lot of wrestling matches, because it's so rare to be surprised by a hardcore match. You're like, okay, now the table, I get it, and now I know what's going to happen. And the only way to surprise you is by like upping the brutality to a point where it starts to become uncomfortable.
True. But also a thing with that is that like there are, like I said, there are good hardcore matches, but like even a mediocre hardcore match is not something I entirely want to see. Like
Nope.
it's more or less like, oh, and if you're like at a bad hardcore match, you're just like, oh, this is garbage. Um and the thing with hardcore matches is, like you were saying, if you wanted to show somebody wrestling, you would want to show them a high flying match, and you wouldn't want to show them a hardcore match. Like,
Absolutely
I
not.
mean, there's very few people, and almost none of them I would want to be friends with, that I would want to that if I were to introduce to wrestling, like this guy's got to see hardcore matches. Like
Yeah,
there
I
are people
know.
who would be those people. Generally, I'm probably not going to be friends with them, and generally they're probably in jail.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, hardcore matches they're not for everyone's taste, and they're not really for my taste. I've enjoyed some of them. I think there can be, as you said, like they can be really well done. But even the ones that I think are like innovative and kind of push the form, they make me think, what am I watching here? Like a lot of Nick Gage's hardcore matches, when you watch them, like you just like when he takes out like a power drill, you're like, do I want to see this? Like honestly not sure I want to see where this goes.
Yeah, that's the thing. And being in Japan, there's Atsushi Onita, who is still wrestling, still doing hardcore matches. Um,
God, that's crazy.
like as as interesting it is, I don't want to see any exploding barbed wire matches.
No.
Like, I don't want to see anybody wrapped in barbed wire and have things explode on them. That's
Right. Or do a fall from the top of a ladder onto a table that's covered in light tubes. I just don't want to see that.
yeah. I mean, it's exciting. I understand why people would like that because it's crazy, but at the same time, I think like um, there are certain levels of crazy that I'm willing to see in person, and that probably is above it. Even though, I mean, we saw New Jack. We saw
We
New Jack
did.
multiple
We did.
times.
We did see New Jack multiple times. And ECW had a lot more of that hardcore stuff than most promotions
Yeah,
have
Balls
today.
Mahoney and Axel Run, and
Yeah, you were going to see more than one hardcore match at an ECW show, certainly by the end of the 90s. Um, and yeah, but I think we were also younger and it was sort of new. There was more novelty to it then. I remember I was with friends at a Beyond show and there was a casket match between Matt Tremont and Stockade, and like they're just like they're body slamming each other onto piles of cinder blocks. And I remember turning to my friends and saying, we might actually see someone go to the hospital tonight. And we did, although ironically it was a high flyer who split his head open. But yeah, it was one of those things where you're watching it and you think like the line between this and human cockfighting is much more thin than I am comfortable with.
yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that. And hardcore wrestling, like I guess like I assume there's not as many fans now as there used to be. But man, I'm always kind of mystified by people who are nostalgic for the hardcore wrestling, like especially in WWE where it was like hardcore wrestling light, where people
Right,
are always like trying to. If you look online, there's always people trying to get WWE to bring back the hardcore title, and it was the
right.
worst title in WWE history. I can't imagine a worse title than the hardcore
Absolutely.
title because it was so stupid. Like um, there was no matches. It was just like whatever. If you see that guy, you can pin him.
Right. Yeah, and actually, I kind of like what Chikara did. With they had their 24/7 hardcore title, and they just it's like an increasingly ridiculous and absurd series of vines where like guys are fighting at weddings, and like someone attacks Drew Gulak in his kitchen at home. Like it's just like it turns into a comedy thing, which is the only thing you can do with it, honestly. Um, but yeah, to me, there's this weird veneration of the hardcore style, especially among like sort of online fans who think that anything hardcore is sort of good by definition, but the actual number of like great hardcore matches I've seen in my life is very, very small.
I tend to agree with that. And I mean, I've seen a lot of hardcore matches, but at the same time, if you think about it, like there were when ECW was big, there were all those kind of knockoff promotions that were just like we're more hardcore than ECW, you know,
Oh yeah.
and none of them got popular.
What are you saying about XPW?
XPW was exactly who I was thinking of, uh, but XPW that was just wasn't going to happen. It's not the kind of thing that it's not going to be the kind of thing that draws people to your promotion. And like that wasn't even what drew us to ECW, even though like
No.
ECW's was known as like the hardcore promotion in the sense that but that there were hardcore matches. But if you went to ECW shows, you know that like there were one or two hardcore matches on a show with like 10 matches. Like
Yeah, honestly, even when we were like in our early 20s and going to ECW shows a lot, like I remember very well that like when we'd hear Balls Mahoney's music and we'd like wander over to the concession stand, like that was like our popcorn match because we just didn't. That was not what we were there to see.
yeah, and it had to be that one because like you couldn't do that during a New Jack match because his music never turned off and he just would go through the crowd and smash things on people.
That's right. Yeah, New Jack was legitimately frightening.
It's true. Um, yeah,
um,
New Jack. It was just like New Jack's music never turned off, except when he broke his neck. Then
no,
they turned the music off. Um,
and that's why, by the way, it's like watching ECW on the network is the pay-per-views. It's very difficult to concentrate because they don't use New Jack's actual music from ECW, and so they just edit in like generic rap beat number 7, and it never turns off because New Jack's music never turned off, so they can't turn it off. So whenever New Jack shows up, it's just like it's the worst, most generic rap music playing.
I haven't
It's very
watched any of
distracting.
the ECW's any ECW stuff on the network because I can't get the network. Also, totally related to that, but unrelated to the story. Japan is apparently getting the network next year in January,
Oh,
so
nice.
maybe I'll actually be able to get the network. But anyway, I haven't watched any of the ECW pay-per-views on the network. Did they edit out all the music, like Rob Van Dam and the Sandman?
Yep.
What do they do for the
Yep.
Sandman?
They don't.
What
They just have like
what
generic WWE
what do they
owned
do with the
music.
crowd?
It's so weird because like they have like this generic like hard rock track for Rob Van Dam, and like the crowd is singing the Pantera song, but that's not the music that's playing.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Like, how do it must be really awkward
It
because
is really awkward, and because those entrances took a long
yeah,
time.
because like everybody wanted to sing along to Walk or whatever with Rob Van Dam or like
Yep.
Enter Sandman or whatever, and those played a long time. They would slowly walk out while the entire song played. Like, they'll,
Yeah, I mean, the Sandman was like his act was like 90% entrance.
yeah, I mean, because all he did was hit people with a kendo stick and drink beer. Like,
That's right.
what else is he gonna do? He's got to have a long entrance. Um,
He was like Gorgeous George in that sense, and in no other sense.
yeah, that's the thing. So who knows? That's it. That's pretty interesting that they edit out all the music. I mean, it's not surprising, but it must be really awkward for a lot of those guys who were.
It is, and honestly, it's something that like if someone had asked you like what's an essential part of ECW, like you wouldn't have said, "Oh, the music," but they actually use the music really, really well, and it that doesn't occur to you until you see it not used really well, and then it becomes very, very noticeable.
it just seems like it would be really, really noticeable for those guys because the crowd sings along.
Yes, exactly.
So, um, I don't know if you were, I mean, I'm sure you remember, but there was that guy who was a local indie wrestler who used Mother for the Danzig song as his
Sure,
entrance theme. Like, everybody would sing along. Nobody liked that guy, but everyone would sing along to his theme song.
that's
And
true.
that was the kind of thing where, like, without that theme song, nobody would have liked that guy.
That's true. And it's even more like when people actually like someone. Um, one of the wrestlers I saw over the weekend was Tommaso Ciampa, who of course has a lot of fans, and he comes out to Psycho Killer by the Talking Heads, and the crowd loves it. It's so much fun to sing along with a song that you know for a wrestler that you like. That's one of the things that kind of bums me out about WWE refusing to pay rights fees. They only ever did it for CM Punk.
Did they not do it for anybody else? Is there no other examples of that?
I think maybe early on, but after like certainly after the mid '90s, they had all their own in-house music. They
Bray
wouldn't do it for
Wyatt,
anyone
maybe?
else. Oh, Bray Wyatt, right? They you're right. Bray Wyatt is another example. That's just like some. So that's a good counterexample. But that was like I don't think they had to pay very much for that because that was some local band. It wasn't like they had to pay rights fees to the Talking Heads or something, which would be much more expensive. I think they cut like a deal with that band to get it for some kind of reasonable. But I think, by the way, I think it's totally ridiculous that a lot of rights fees are so prohibitively expensive that not even $1 billion company wants to entertain the broadcast obligation for it. Um, because it does, I think it adds to the experience when you actually know the music that people are coming out to. That was the whole point of music in the first place, right? Gorgeous George is the first person who has music in its pomp and circumstance. That was the idea, was that people are going to be like, okay, here's this pretentious twit. And, with Ric Flair coming out to also Sprack Zarathustra. Well, that's one secret, by the way. Classical music that usually it's in the public domain. So you just feel free. Everyone should have classical music. Um, but yeah, it kind of bums me out, and it's especially distracting when you're watching uh, ECW on the network and guys like this. Like you remember the music of all those guys, and then you're like, "What the hell is this?"
Oh yeah, it always makes me wonder. Did they do that for WCW pay-per-views too?
They do,
Weird. I mean,
although
I
although
can't think
some
of like any licensed music WCW is using, but they must have used some. I mean, the NWO music is licensed.
That's right. Some of the music WCW had the rights to, so that those are used. And you can, I mean, it's obvious because like they've got to edit out the sound and then like mix in the new music, so it's always softer and worse.
Yeah,
So it's apparent when they're editing in new music.
it's interesting. I haven't had the experience because I haven't had a lot of network watching time.
Well, maybe in January that's going to change, and you'll get the experience of hearing generic rap beat number seven for like 9 minutes or however long it is before New Jack
Worried about
leaves.
what is actually going to be on the network when it comes to Japan, though.
You don't think it's going to be the full
I
the
don't
full
know.
deal?
I mean, because there is Japanese language content for WWE, like the shows are on some kind of TV network, and I assume there's like a Japanese dubbing if it's on TV. So I wonder if they're going to use those or they're going to just like screw you Japanese guys, you get the all English like everybody else.
Oh, right.
Um,
Good. Yeah.
I mean I don't know how it works in other countries. Are there any like non-English speaking countries that have the network right now that are we could use as an example?
It must be in Spanish speaking countries, and there's definitely Spanish speaking
Yeah,
content.
but there's obviously Spanish speaking content in the sense that like there's the Spanish announce table and it's all like done by the WWE, but like I assume that the Japanese content is not done by WWE. Like it's done by whoever is licensing the program to show on their cable channel.
Uh, oh, right. That's a good point.
So
Yeah, I'm not sure.
it makes me wonder like what is the content going to be? Is it going to be only stuff with Japanese content? Because that might make the network not worth it. But
That's
if
true.
it's just going to be like, well, I mean, worst case scenario would be that. But like it could just be same old network, all English. But I think that would probably make it less popular in Japan. And third scenario would be that like they use as much Japanese language content as they can get, and then just like the rest of the stuff they use in English. I mean, I'd be okay with that,
Yeah, that would be
but
reasonable.
who knows how it'll be. I imagine it's just going to be the app itself will be translated into Japanese, and then the content will just be all in English. I mean, that's
It
kind of
could be.
how I imagine it will be. I mean, it's kind of still one step up on the New Japan streaming service, which just has their Google Translate going on.
Right, yes, which as you've demonstrated is maybe not the most reliable way to figure out what's
It's
going on.
terrible. it's um, it's actually a little shocking that they do that, if only because they have, the actual New Japan site is translated. Like it's translated. I mean, not everything is translated. If you click on the English version of the site, it's like truncated, but um, it's professionally done. There's not like huge errors on every sentence. So, but the New Japan World, which is like a thing that English speakers actually want to use and sign up for, is like entirely only done through Google Translate, and with hilarious results. They should just they
It
should
is.
just hire
They're
somebody to
delightful results.
translate the site. I mean, they update it regularly, but like just hire somebody to work in your office that does the website, and they'll just translate the stuff immediately. I mean, a lot of the stuff is like one or two paragraphs. You can do that in like a half an hour. Yeah, I don't know. It's just like the kind of thing where like looking at it, I hope that the WWE's app will be a bit better than that. But who knows?
Who knows? Um, all right, I think that's it for this
Yeah,
week.
that's
I
about
think
it.
we've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, we did cover a lot of things, and we it's a much longer episode than last time.
It is. Coming up this weekend, Evolve has two events in New York, or maybe it's Florida this week. I forget. But they should be Evolve-tastic. It'll be interesting to see if there's any WWE overlap or involvement because NXT is obviously nearby. The WWE has a lot of people in Florida. There's nothing scheduled right now, but who knows? Things could change. Um, Johnny Gargano and Timothy Thatcher, I think, is the main event of the first night, and I believe Matt Riddle is going to be wrestling Hot Sauce Tracy Williams and Drew Gulak, so that'll be interesting. Other than that, I don't know if anything major is coming up. We're still a ways off from Survivor Series,
Oh, Survivor Series. There's gonna be lightning. There
and
will be lightning.
there will be lightning. I'm very excited for that. I'm honestly excited for that. So yeah, until next week, I'm sure more exciting news will happen, and perhaps we'll know more about the classic wrestling revolution.
Yeah, maybe, but maybe not. Who knows?
Maybe not.
But yeah, so you want to tell everyone about our glorious Tumblrs and Twitters and all of that stuff?
If you like what you've heard, and I can't imagine you not liking what you've heard, you should seek out more
Unless
from
you're a huge
us.
fan of hardcore wrestling, then you probably did not
Yeah,
like.
no, in which case, yeah, you're spoiling for a fight, and you're gonna like find us and throw
But
thumbtacks
if
at
you
us.
want to do that,
Or-
you can find us through these various ways. So you're gonna have to check them anyway. So listen up.
that's right. To set up the thumbtack match with us, you can find us on Twitter. I am at TJ Breen, and you are at XCornMuffinX. Same as this YouTube channel. If you'd like even more wrestling content from us, then you can find us on Tumblr, where pretty much all we do is wrestling content. You can find closetofanxiety.tumblr.com and
Yeah,
hakujinjo.tumblr.com.
and these
There's
are all linked
often
below the video too, so you can easily go there.
You can easily go there, and there's often content cross-posted, but follow both because you want to stay up on the latest doings in wrestling and old pictures of AWA wrestlers bleeding.
There's lots of that.
There's lots of
Yeah, surprisingly, if you like old wrestling, there's probably more content on the blogs about old wrestling than new wrestling.
yeah. If you want to know like what was in kayfabe magazines in the early 1980s, we are here to
If you
serve
want to
you.
see pictures of Hulk Hogan wrestling luchadors in 1983, check out the blogs because there's pictures. If you want to see, if
There
you want
are
to see a Japanese magazine mistakenly refer to Bret Hart as Bread Hart, bread like the food, you can see it on the the Tumblr. It's there.
there's just a lot of good stuff out there. So yeah, if you like that, and if you want to yell at us or compliment us or agree with us or disagree with us, those are all the best ways to do it. Or you can comment right here on this YouTube channel.
Yes, you can do all of those things. There's many ways to get in contact with us, so do it. Do it now.
All right, and thank you again for listening, and we will talk to you next
See you
week.
guys next time.